States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item B on the agenda for this evening is to approve the agenda. Can I get if there are no changes that are requested, can I get I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, agenda is hereby approved. Presentations, we have a retirement for Rick Gustafson. And so that's Mr. Powers.
Mayor and Council, tonight the City of Lake Elmo would like to recognize Public Works Operator Rick Gustafson for his 34 years and 2 months of dedicated service. Rick's knowledge, experience, skills, and demeanor will be tough to replace. Rick was strong in the street side of the Public Works. He's skilled finish grader and is proficient as a snowplow operator and the loader. Rick knew the streets, the residents, and their expectations. He was always reliable, willing to respond after hours to help out the department, his team, and the residents. His historical knowledge of the city and every street sign in it will be hard to replace. I have enjoyed working with Rick and wish him the best of luck in retirement. Again, we would like to acknowledge Rick's retirement, his value, dedication, and efforts he contributed within Public Works Department for over 34 years. He will be missed.
Thank you.
Presentations until.
He's going just a little bit. Thank you. One more. Thank you.
I certainly appreciate the guys in Public Works. I'm a member of the American Public Works Association through my day job, and so I know a lot of those things that those guys go through, and every day we use the infrastructure that those guys pay attention to, and we oftentimes don't see the work that they go through to make sure that we can get to where we need to be safely and everything. So thanks again for your commitment to Lake Elmo, Mr. Gustafson. We don't have any public comments and queries at this time, but we do have Representative Wayne Johnson in the House that would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. As mentioned, I'm Wayne Johnson. I'm the new representative, House representative for the area. I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. And yes, it's crazy down there, but I think we will be able to get the work done when we all get together. My main thing is I've done this. I was county commissioner, and I decided I'm going to do this as House member too. It's just periodically stop by and say hi. I'm here. I'm reachable. If you ever have any questions or if you have a particular item that you need help with down at the House, I'm here. My office is open. Well, we technically don't have offices. We have cubicles this year. But I have an LA that you can reach out to, and if you ever want to set up a meeting. We have a lot of things going on. I don't know what you've heard. A lot of times the media is down there every day. Our goal is to get together soon, hoping that it's going to be soon, so we can get the budget done. We do have a budget year this year. So that's the one thing we have to do. We're hoping to also be able to get some bonding in there in case Lake Elmo has some projects that you'd like to see, capital projects that you need some capital bonding. Please reach out to me for that, preferably sooner rather than later. They're really putting priority on true infrastructure, road, water type projects and stuff like that. So if you have something like that, I'd definitely like to hear about it. But I also just want to see if you had any questions, and off the top of your head or stuff like that. Otherwise, just to make sure you know I'm here for you and the citizens of Lake Elmo.
Really appreciate you stopping by and introducing yourself, and good luck down there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item E on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 21st, 2025 meeting that were provided in our packet. If everything seems to be okay in there, I'll entertain a motion.
So move. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes, January 21st, 2025. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, minutes are hereby approved. On our consent agenda, we have approved payment of disbursements and payroll, approve Pebble Park parking lot expansion, approve landscaping zoning text amendment, ordinance 2025.0-01, and resolution 2025-11. Approve Public Works Operator 3 hire. Approve housekeeping zone text amendment ordinance 2025-02 and resolution 2025-12. And approve site access agreement with Washington County CDA at 3510 Laverne Avenue, 11120 Upper 33rd Street. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda is hereby approved. Moving into our regular agenda, we have Baywest access agreement.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, Baywest approached the city last year through the MPCA, looking to perform some research on PFAS destruction and looking to see if there's a spot in Lake Elmo that they could conduct their research. Their interest in the city was to be close to the foam concentrate that was removed, the PFAS concentrate from the SAF unit at Pebble Park. And so we toured a couple sites, and the land behind Public Works was the desired site location. And so tonight, Baywest is here to give a presentation, and on the agenda is an access agreement for you to consider approval to allow them to do the research. The research would be about 4 to 5 weeks and would commence approximately mid-April of this year. So we have Susan Roberts from Baywest and her team here to do a presentation for you.
Mayor and City Council members, thank you for allowing us to come and give a little bit of overview about the research that we're proposing. And the site access request is based on Lake Elmo's familiarity with PFAS and some of the issues that it causes. And we're very excited about the research that we've already been documenting for the past year. The request really focuses on a field-scale demonstration of PFAS destruction using supercritical water oxidation. This is an approach that simply puts water at critical temperatures and pressures and destroys even stable bonds such as carbon and fluorine bonds that we've heard about as forever chemicals. So this is a request for temporary access at the ideal Avenue site. And what would be happening there is what I'm going to give an overview about the destruction testing that we're talking about. One of the things I'd like to bring up front.
I'm sorry,
Yes, sir.
could you move the mics a little closer to you or
I'd be
some-
happy
yeah,
to. Is
that'd
this
be
better,
great.
sir?
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you so much. One of the things that I'd like to bring up in front is that why the Pebble Park Avenue site. And it has to do with the familiarity of the group and the citizens with the PFAS problems in this area. So last year, through MPCA, we were able to acquire some of what they call SAF concentrate. And that's removing PFAS from the creeks and we successfully destroyed it in one of our first tests. We've done some other testing on Minnesota Fire Department firefighting foam, and again, successful tests that we have results on. We now need to go to a field demonstration. One of the things that we get asked right up front is, what is the cost to the city? There's no cost. This is federally funded research, and Baywest, all the terms and conditions have been noted in the access agreement. Supercritical water oxidation does operate at high temperatures and pressures, and General Atomics, who is our teaming partner, has been working with this for over 30 years. Quite frankly, they're experts in the field of supercritical water oxidation, developing the systems and doing sales on all types of organics. PFAS is the latest and does require, under our contract for the research, a field demonstration. So on the safety side, we've been working with General Atomics and talking to the city about all the concerns. We feel that we can address those and put mitigation measures right up front for operating the systems. One of the questions we get quite a bit are about the noise. What sort of noise would we expect? So we've taken measurements from the General Atomics facility, mapped it on here, and show where the city code at the upper limits of 40 decibels is right out on Ideal Avenue. Please keep in mind that 40 decibels is about a refrigerator hum. So during the daytime, this is much less than traffic noise. Supercritical water oxidation also has equipment, and we show on the site drawings that are part of the access agreement how this layout would be managed, including materials and storage. So for the PFAS compounds and materials that are to be destroyed, we have in secondary containment. If there's any sort of leak or spill, that secondary containment is rated to take care of it. And then I want to just note for site restoration, what would the site look like after our research? And basically, we remove all equipment, containers, all trash and debris. We would do a city walk with the city staff and leave only the gravel pad. So I note that here are the top priorities. Every field research is only as good as the quality of the research. So I note here just a couple of the things that, really the tip of the iceberg of everything that we do towards safety, the quality of the experimentation, the quality of the equipment being used. A couple of considerations for the City Council. We're looking at about 4 to 5 weeks on site. Again, this is temporary research. And during that time, we would do, a typical day would be a startup, an hour, checking all the systems, doing about 5 or 6 hours of test runs, and then an hour of shutdown. We also want to note, in addition to the considerations on here, that we've started some discussions with city staff about the outreach, and we would be helping city staff on that outreach to the public. What happens in PFAS destruction? How does this take place, and what does it mean for the city? So in conclusion, what I'd like to point out is that we're really excited about a unique opportunity. This is taking a PFAS problem all the way from defining it, as shown on the map, all the way to destruction. This is not happening anywhere else around the country that we know of. This is pretty unique. And we'd really like to partner with the city on this and help solve one of the local problems and show that this is very much a successful, not only research, but a field scale test. So thank you very much for allowing us to present, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Holtz?
Thank you for that. So one question, when it comes to transporting it from the Tablin Park site to here, is that going to be a one-time transport of all materials, one time, or is it going to be an ongoing every 2 or 3 weeks when more material has been gathered? What does that look like?
A very good question. MPCA has made it clear that what they will release is probably a one-time. They want to do it through a request proposal, and they would like to put it out to all interested parties. So MPCA has known about this research since, I would say, a year ago, and knows that we're interested, and they have not released that RFP. But we would expect that one to be a one-time shipment. Also of the firefighting foam from Minnesota Fire Departments, also another one-time shipment. Baywest is experts in transporting any types of materials, and so that's part of our work under this contract.
So an MPCA will be in charge of that process of transport in terms of the governance, in terms of the regulatory framework, in terms of meeting requirements for safety protocols.
When in charge of, once we accept it into our care, then we're the ones in charge. we follow all the MPCA rules, absolutely. And we've been doing it for decades on all our environmental services work.
Gotcha. And then second question, as it is federally funded, are those dollars already on hand by by your group and by Baywest? Like, they're already there, it's not a future incoming dollars on a rolling basis?
That is correct. We have already been doing research testing at the General Atomics facility in San Diego, and so that those funds are ongoing. We do have, the period of performance is through this year.
Gotcha. So the funds to pay for this already exist. You do not need to worry about any potential changes.
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Maybe just, I guess, to dig into a little bit, just as far as the risk goes. I mean, with any research that we're doing, of course, there's risk from Baywest standpoint. What does the risk look like for issues with contamination from the materials that are being tested, from transport while you're testing? I guess just to be thorough, I'd be interested to just kind of hear your perspective on what the risk level is with that.
Thank you very much for that question about the risk. That's something we've been addressing again for the past year. The first off is how we're planning and designing this for the field scale. We're dealing with materials that have already been tested in more of a controlled situation. The field scale is taking the same piece of equipment, we're simply putting it in a field environment. So the contract requires us to do this type of work. Second, I mentioned about whether there's spills and how we're containing everything. All the secondary containment is rated for the material specific and the volume that we have. If there's any sort of leak, the secondary would contain it. If there's a leak beyond that, it's Baywest's responsibility to clean it up, not the city's.
What happens if there is a leak beyond that secondary system?
It's unusual and we haven't seen it.
Okay.
But basically, we define the depth of what has happened into the soil. This would be on the gravel pad that's would be installed by Baywest.
Okay.
And so those materials would be dug out, tested, taken to the appropriate location for dealing with it based on the analytical, and that material filled back in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Councilmember Holtz.
On that same vein, we aren't indemnifying Baywest, are we?
It's in the agreement.
I don't think it was in there.
As their liability.
That's what I recall.
No.
You could ask council.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, paragraph 10 of the agreement talks about how Baywest is assuming all liability for their actions in performing this work. And they will indemnify and defend and hold the city and its officials, employees, and agents, contractors harmless from any claims that might arise from their work under the agreement.
Any further questions? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
I'll second the motion to approve access agreement with Baywest to conduct PFAS destruction research at city-owned land located at 3445 Ideal Avenue.
All right. Any discussion? Councilmember Holtz.
Just thank you for bringing this forward. I know we had the phone call a couple months ago when this was previewed, and it's not something we want to have. Be far better to not even have this before us and not have it to begin with, but I appreciate that you guys have the expertise and the dollars on hand to work on this, because if it potentially is a more efficient way to do the destruction process, it helps millions.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that comment.
Appreciate the opportunity to partner with you on this. I think anytime we kind of, as much as we're impacted, have the ability to work with somebody that's doing research, it's, we want to be there, so. Call the question. All those in favor to approve the access agreement with Baywest to conduct PFAS destruction research at city-owned land located at 3445 Ideal Avenue, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Access agreement's approved. Next on the agenda is the Old Village Garden Improvement.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Council. Brought to us in 2024 was the option of improving and beautifying the old village area. There's 5 gardens along the businesses in the sidewalk, and a group of volunteers, including Lake Elmo Connect, had brought to us a plan that, that they were proposing to tear out and replace the plantings that now exist. The existing plantings are obviously thin, weeded, and in need of replacement. So we took Lake Elmo Connect's plan, took a look at it internally with staff. We had our architect, landscape architect, review it with their recommendations and a few minor changes. We're bringing to you what our recommendations are, and you can then decide how you would like to move forward with those improvements. Sarah can walk you through that slideshow.
Thanks, Marty. Let's just pop this up. All right. Let's see. There we go. All right, so I'm going to walk through the purpose of the project, species selection. We got some quotes and references as well, and then a motion, should you so choose. So project purpose, as Marty mentioned, we know that Old Village Gardens is an important part of Lake Elmo's downtown, and so we want to make sure that those planting beds along that area are representative of what we want to be putting forward to folks who are visiting and who live in the area. And so we're looking to replace what was there and then replace it with some hardy species that are going to look good year-round, and do it right this time so that we can make sure that it doesn't end up looking like this again. So species selection. We wanted to make sure that we're really focusing, because this is along a roadway, on hardy, resilient species that provide seasonal interest. Now, planting design is subjective. People are going to have a lot of opinions on it. But when I do planting design, I like to make sure that we're going to be experiencing bloom throughout the growing season, so spring through fall. I like to make sure that the species selected are salt tolerant, because we know we live in Minnesota and there's going to be salt in these soils at the end of every winter. We wanted a simple plant palette, just a handful of species, so that makes maintenance a little bit easier. We wanted to make sure that those species are carried through along the corridor, which allows for easy recognition and sort of helps to brand the corridor a little bit. And we also wanted to make sure that the species selected are going to withstand urban pollution and also be relatively neat and tidy. Nothing shown here grows to more than 2.5 feet tall. So the plants selected include some existing sea green juniper that we can kind of keep in place and use where it's healthy, and supplementing that. That, of course, provides good winter interest. Side oats grama grass, that provides sort of an airy filler and some nice winter interest as well. We've got Russian sage, which blooms mid to late summer. And then the allium, which is also kind of a neat plant for winter interest, that'll give our early summer bloom. Autumn joy sedum, which blooms through October. And then for some spring color, trumpet daffodils. Now, absent from our recommendations are trees. Initially, there were trees proposed in these planting beds, and when we looked at the calculations for the area that's provided, there's just not a lot of soil volume that we get, and you know, trees do best if they have a certain amount of soil volume. These planting beds are, in general, about 250 square feet. Tree roots don't like to grow down more than 2 feet or so. And so with potentially 500 cubic feet of soil volume, that's not actually enough to support even small trees in a really healthy manner. So currently what we quoted doesn't include trees. Now, there's no harm in adding trees back into this. We can always try them out and see how they do. But right now, I'm not recommending them just because I don't know. I can't really guarantee that they're gonna do very well. Okay, so the plans that we put forward, we got quotes for. We reached out to 3 different contractors. McDowell Landscapes did not respond, but Hoffman and McNamara did, and Pioneer Landscaping did. We have experience with both of these companies through work that they've been doing in various developments around town, and feel confident in that either of them would be capable in completing this work. Pioneer Landscaping came in much more affordably. We also priced annual maintenance and watering, knowing that city staff, sometimes doesn't have the capacity or maybe the detailed skill level to do the weeding on plantings like this. And so we have the option of including maintenance and watering as needed as a part of this contract. We also pulled references for Pioneer because they did come in quite low. And so, from our experience with them, they worked on the DQ site recently. We've been out and talked to the owner. He's super responsive and easy to work with. And also, verified through some of the references that we saw. So we come to you today with a few different motion options. One would be to approve the plan and contract with Pioneer and include maintenance. The other would be to approve the plan and contract with them and not go with the maintenance contract, amend the plan and return, or table it for more discussion.
Okay. Questions? You have a question?
Start it off, sure.
All right.
Yep. Okay, so, yeah, thank you for the presentation, and for the work on this. Obviously, it's changed a little bit from, originally what, the options that we saw at our last meeting where we were discussing this. I guess if we could just have a little conversation about that, obviously,
Yeah.
I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the, kind of the consensus was, that English Gardens from the first set of 3 options that, seemed to be kind of like the most liked option.
Sure.
It did include the trees. I guess if you can just talk a little bit of where we deviated from there, maybe how come.
Yeah, so the English garden concept had, I believe, a catmint as like a sort of purple underlayer, and poppies. So the oriental poppies we pulled out just because they're not a local plant. They're not readily available in the nursery trade around here. They tend to reseed, and so that can be kind of hard for maintenance and also just longevity. And they're also not salt tolerant, so I didn't think that they would be a good fit along the streetscape. Now, I did mention that planting plans are relatively subjective. The catmint is super similar to the Russian sage that we're proposing, and I'd be happy to swap that out if that's a preference. I believe the Persian blue cultivar that was recommended is a little less drought tolerant than other types of catmints, and so we just moved towards a more drought tolerant recommendation. But again, I'm happy to swap anything out if there's major preferences.
I think, if I remember correctly, part of the English garden, and maybe you could speak to this on the Russian sage, that's also purple, right?
Yeah, it looks super
just-
similar.
When it blooms, how long it blooms, some of the activity for butterflies and some of the dandelions and things, so.
Pretty much 1-to-1 for the catmint. It also blooms kind of June through August or September even sometimes. Similar heights, again, very drought tolerant, and just as attractive to pollinators, I'd say.
So oftentimes, as opposed to even just looking at aesthetics, I know that trees everybody wants to plant trees next to the road, and they get hard because we constrain them in a plant box and the roots
Yeah.
don't grow. The thing that I like about some of the vertical structure of trees is it creates a bit of a traffic calming.
It does,
You
yeah.
know, it gives you that visual vertical constraint barrier. So what would it take to be able to be able to provide some vertical structure with trees in this area based
Sure.
on your experience?
Well, some of the other tree plantings that are along the corridor, they appear to, and I wasn't privy to this project when it went in, but it looks like they have tree trenches.
Yeah,
So even though they're paved, there's still like a decent amount of soil volume underneath them. I think we'd probably want to take out some of the sidewalk and then fill in with structural soils and then pave over the top of it so that you can provide that adequate soil volume for the trees, even under the sidewalks.
right.
And then, along with that, and I love trees and I want to recommend them everywhere, but I'm very sensitive to the fact that they don't always survive. It also comes with added maintenance and watering attention. We definitely would want to make sure that those trees are getting watered frequently or at least have gator bags that are filled. And so that's just an added consideration for making sure that those trees have the best chance.
With the trees that were initially proposed as well, I guess just kind of continue with that, the concern of having enough soil with those trees that
Yeah.
were initially proposed. Would that raise the concern that you have about the amount of soil, just because of the size of the trees on the eastern side that were being proposed? Or maybe it doesn't matter so much? I guess if you could just speak to that a little.
Yeah, the size of the trees that are proposed.
Yeah.
I did note that in the original proposal, there were 3 and 4 inch mature trees proposed, and those trees are very large and very expensive, and they would be, I wouldn't give them more than a 50% chance of surviving. So if we were to plant trees along here, I would probably spec smaller caliper trees and be pretty thoughtful about the cultivars that we're recommending, just again to optimize their survivability. Probably also selecting smaller tree species that don't want sort of the rooting volume that, say, like an elm would.
Okay.
Councilmember Dragisich.
I think the addition of trees would add to the beauty of the downtown. I'm a big tree person.
Yeah.
I look in here, I see like the autumn red maples, I don't think would be such a good choice because their roots are fairly invasive but I think there should be some species that we could make work, even if it added to the cost or adding more soil volume or that. I think it would add to the beauty of the downtown.
Yeah.
Personally, and I would tend to favor that direction. I'm not much for picking out the types of trees, so I'd leave that to people much smarter than I. But I think it would make a nice addition.
So I think if we wanted to pursue trees, we'd want to get some detailed survey of the street so that we know where utilities are and where there might be conflicts. That's another piece of information that we didn't have as part of this exercise. And so we'd want that to confirm where it's feasible.
Yes, Councilmember Dragisich.
Say one more thing, if the majority decides to go in the direction of trees, would there be, some interaction with the downtown groups to say, well, what kind of trees would they like? So we end up with a plan that everyone says good, rather than us picking out, river birch and someone saying, that's the ugliest tree I ever saw.
Yeah. Yeah, so there wasn't community engagement directed by the council as part of this exercise. I do community engagement a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially when it comes to local businesses fronting these plantings. So I think we could put a plant list together with some options and then talk through it with the group, circulate it, get people's feedback, and then make a selection. But again, when we talk about adding trees and potentially it becomes a sidewalk project as well, and then really investing in options for additional rooting volume so that these trees have a chance, that becomes a little bit of a bigger project.
Councilmember Holtz.
In terms of the two different options, one with maintenance costs and one with not, Marty, how do you see that in terms of, is there more value just to contracting that out?
The maintenance, so we, in the summertime, are obviously busy. We have seasonals that are very limited skilled, and even my staff, it's like putting a bull in a china shop. They don't always know what they're pulling. Obviously, some of the weeds are a little more apparent, but they have no background as master gardeners or anything. Can we do it? We'll do our best. You look at them right now and
So what you're saying is, yes. the,
Yes, you see
maintenance-
value.
there could be some benefits of having someone, a professional do it.
I was thinking Counselor Herney's right downtown, he could just take care of it on his coffee break.
I wouldn't even
Yeah.
trust him.
Green thumb,
He's young, he's in shape.
Really?
never know. Could be a good workout.
I guess a follow-up question then, in terms of, along the line of Councilmember Drasich's interest with trees. I'm curious, because you mentioned maybe it needs to be surveyed, obviously, for possible utilities, but also for which sites maybe don't need any alteration, which sites might need some alteration. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Kind of a full scope, like how many are possible with the least amount of resources, how many are possible with some resources?
Right, I mean, it may be that there's areas along the streetscape that make sense for a tree that actually don't have a planting bed there right now. It may be that if we are able to utilize the soil volume within the planting bed and capture some beneath an adjacent sidewalk, that we'd be, setting it up for success a lot better. But yeah, right now, just given the existing status, I wouldn't necessarily recommend adding trees.
Almost like a phase 2 type thing?
Yeah, but then if you put plantings in now and then you rip it out later to add trees, it's hard to do hardscape work adjacent to existing plants and not impact them.
Timeline-wise, could that type of analysis be done in time before plantings would start?
Do you know if we have survey of that street?
We have some information, yes.
So I'd have to take a look at what's available.
Yeah, another question here. So, again, I know a lot of effort was also put in by Connect Lake Elmo, landscape architects. What's the communication been like through this process since our last meeting to where we're at now? Have you guys had communication with the group as far as, hey, with these changes, what that looks like, getting their feedback from the businesses and the community members that they're engaging with? What have those conversations looked like?
I can take that. So, yeah, Councilmember Hearn, the engagement's been somewhat minimal. We took their initial plan, your feedback from the workshop in September, and then we started working with our landscape architect. They really didn't, beyond your input, we really didn't engage much more than just give them updates of where we're at and when we'd be presenting at council. So not a big formal presentation by any means.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Holtz.
When would a contract need to be entered in by? As much as I would love to say spring is around the corner, it's not quite yet, but they also get backed up. They start taking orders now for landscaping companies, so I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to plant by mid-June for sure, and we backed that out for contracting a month or two, I would say we have probably until April. So if we have survey information, we could definitely take a look and figure out where we have the capacity to add soil volume. Again, this will add hardscape work to the project as well, but trees are really meaningful, and I think they're great in business districts especially. There's a lot of good data on public realm and influencing people spending money along streetscapes that have trees. So I think it's a worthwhile endeavor if we were able to get the info.
motion to table so this can be reconsidered for additional trees.
Support.
All right, there's a motion to table with a second. All those in favor on tabling and coming back at a later time, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion that the process would include, when we're looking at trees, some public engagement
Yeah.
with the business downtown. And that, this is just me, you guys can yell at me if you want, but I prefer that Persian blue cat And then to the
Happy to
purple
swap it out.
Russian sage. Personally, just looked a little fuller and in place, and that's what kind of drew that, I think, to the council at that time. So that's been,
Yeah, I'll second that, and yeah, maybe a little
Okay.
discussion too.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that too. I think this is one of these examples of where we're getting a lot of community engagement, and I'd hate to see this sour that effort that's been given from the community on this effort as well. I get it that, obviously there's some concerns with the original plan. I'd like to see a little bit more communication with the groups from the community that are putting these efforts in to do this, out of their own goodwill. So yeah, I'm glad we're tabling this discussion. I think there needs to be more, and I very much agree with, I'd like to see a little more community engagement, specifically with that Connect Lake Elmo group, because they have put a lot of effort in as well, and I'd like to see them feel like their voices were heard in this situation as well.
I think the council needs to take responsibility for not making that clear in our workshop. So
Really fair.
that's really our miss in making sure that the Connect Lake Elmo wasn't kind of part of, or the businesses that this is gonna impact, and maybe the importance of the trees, and maybe we could have saved a little time. So lesson learned by us, and we do appreciate all the time that everybody's putting into this. But I think if we're gonna do this, we wanna make sure that it's as good as it can be, because we don't wanna come back and rip something out and, pay for it 2 or 3 times as we go. But I think that a lot of people that walk around downtown with some of the businesses really appreciate when something looks nice and inviting, and I think trees are part of that. We are a tree city, so that's something we need to be aware of. Councilmember Jagger said.
Mayor, I want to echo your comments and again say, please, this is not a bad reflection or criticism or otherwise. It's, if we're going to do this, let's get something, we all step back and everyone will be happy with what I won't say everyone, but most people will be happy with what we have. And if some trees add to that, and understand they add to the cost as well. But when we cut the ribbon, we want people to say cheers and, look happily upon what we've been able to accomplish together.
And right now, I think that the cost is at there. I think we'll be able to do something that still fits within what we had originally planned. Maybe I'm wrong. My wife will tell you that happens all the time. So,
Adopt a tree.
there's a motion on the floor. We've had discussion. I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll move on from Old Village Gardens. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate that. And, yeah. So number 10, Ms. Sophia Johnson, Chavez Variances, Resolution 2025-13.
All right, thank you, Mayor. The applicant for tonight's application is Joe and Joan Chavez. You'll notice a signature line on the application for GWSA. They're the current owners of Outlot B. The property is currently an unassigned parcel, mostly within Sunfish Lake, and then Outlot B, which is that little arm in the northeast corner of the picture on the screen. The property is a little over 11 acres. About 1.37 of that is over the ordinary high water level mark. The property is currently zoned and guided in the comp plan Village Low Density Residential, and it does have a shoreland overlay. So a little history on this area. Outlot B was platted with Northstar First Edition. The property will be receiving access and utilities through Northstar Second Edition. The applicant received a comprehensive plan amendment and zoning map amendment in 2024 to eliminate split zoning between that outlot and the existing parcel. So regardless of if variances are approved tonight, the city would not want split zoning between those two parcels. So that's why that was approved. Past communication, city staff has advised the applicant to work with the Northstar developer to revise the outlot shape and possibly amend their site design to minimize or eliminate the need for variances. The applicant is proposing to proceed with the original outlot shape. So with that original outlot shape, there are 7 variance requests before you tonight. The first is for the ordinary high water level structure setback. Sunfish Lake is a natural environment lake, which has a 150-foot ordinary high water level setback. The applicant is currently proposing a 120-foot setback. The second variance is for structure setback from bluff. Currently, city code has that at 30 feet. The applicant is proposing to construct fully within that bluff area. The third variance is for principal structure in bluff area, which is not permitted in code. That is proposed before you tonight. The fourth is for vegetative clearing in bluff impact zone. Again, that is also not permitted in code, and that is proposed in order to accommodate the driveway and building pad. 5 and 6 go together. 5A is lot suitability, not needing significant alterations to the site. And 5B is subdivision, not needing variances. A lot combination, which is going to be required between the outlot and the existing lot, is a subdivision process, so that's why those two are incorporated in here. And the seventh variance is for grading in shoreland areas, which again is not permitted, and that is proposed by the applicant, again, to accommodate the driveway and building pad. So then this slide has some schematics of the request. The left is the survey with the topography and bluff setback. The right is the slope analysis and tree removal. And then there is a color-coded legend at the bottom. Just for reference, the city defines steep slopes as a 12% grade over 50 feet, which would be that yellow color. And then the city defines a bluff as 18% over 50 feet, which would be that green and orange color. So then, as you are aware, variances have 4 criteria, which are outlined in state statute that they must meet before they are reviewed for approval. I apologize in advance for the wordy slides, but the first criteria is practical difficulties. This is where the strict enforcement of this chapter would cause practical difficulties because of circumstances unique to the individual property under consideration, and then only when it is demonstrated that such actions are keeping with the spirit and intent of the chapter. So staff finds for this first criteria, the practical difficulties criteria is about what is reasonable given the purpose of the ordinance, not what is reasonable to the applicant. The request should be the minimum necessary to achieve the purpose of the ordinance, enjoyment of this parcel in its natural state, building a smaller house, moving the house further from the lake, or even using the property as an access to Sunfish Lake are sufficient and reasonable uses of the property. Staff finds that constructing a large single-family home is not a necessity in this sensitive natural area, so staff finds this criteria is not met. The second variance criteria is unique circumstances. This is plight of the landowner must be due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. So then staff understands that the applicants have owned the property for many years and did not create their parcel. While the bluff setback requirements and shoreline overlay restrictions may have not been in place when the property was purchased, any future development is required to adhere to them. In addition, the applicants have the ability to acquire additional property by revising the outlot shape within Northstar to create a site design that requires minimal or no variances. The applicants may also change the location of the house or decrease its size. Applicants have not demonstrated any attempts to avoid variances based on the size or placement of the home or attempts to acquire more property, so staff finds that criteria is not met. The third variance criteria is character of locality, and this is that the proposed variance request must not alter essential character. So staff finds that the applicants are proposing to develop the property that is situated within a natural bluff and shoreline area, citing that there are existing adjacent residential homes. Staff finds that the existing homes along the south and west were built many years ago, likely under different and less restrictive circumstance requirements. Development on the north and east side of the lake adjacent to this parcel, such as Hamlet on Sunfish Lake and Northstar, were developed to avoid these sensitive areas. This request directly conflicts with the bluff and shoreline regulations that were implemented to protect these sensitive areas. So staff finds that this third criteria is not met. And the fourth and final criteria is adjacent properties and traffic. So this is that the variance would not impair adjacent properties or increase congestion on a public street. Staff finds that although no streets or infrastructure are currently in place to accommodate this request, the request would only add one single-family home. Given that the request only consists of one single-family home, there should not be an increase in congestion on a public street or significantly diminish adjacent property values. So staff finds this criteria is met. So just to recap that, staff finds one of the 4 criteria met. And we did send this application out for agency review on December 2nd. The landscape architect provided a memo recommending denial of the request, citing concerns with vegetative clearing, grading, and erosion in the shoreland area. The city engineer provided a memo also recommending denial, citing concerns with the request being premature since none of the infrastructure or streets are in place that would accommodate this or service this area. He also provided comments regarding off-site easements that would need to be obtained by the applicant. The DNR provided a memo also recommending denial of the variance, citing concerns with the request not meeting 2 of the 4 requirements outlined in statute. They also had concerns with water quality. And then staff had a follow-up conversation with the DNR yesterday, where the DNR further expressed their concerns with the bluff setback and impacts to the bluff zone if the request was approved. The DNR did request to review any plan modifications if they're made. And the watershed indicated that a permit would be required for this type of work. So there were some questions on the state statute that were referenced by the applicant's letter. So that is statute 462357, just outlining what that statute is. It discusses zoning regulations. Subdivision 1E discusses nonconformities, and D through J discuss shoreline, nonconforming shoreline lots of record. Reading further into that statute, subdivision 6 states that variances shall only be permitted when they are in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance and consistent with the comprehensive plan. And subdivision 9 discusses development goals of minimizing development in sensitive shoreline areas and natural areas. So how does that statute apply here? The applicant does not meet the setback exemptions of E1, specifically related to the bluff setback and the ordinary high water level setback. Subdivision 6, staff has determined that the request is not in harmony with the ordinance, as outlined in the findings earlier stated. And subdivision 9, the applicant is proposing to develop in the sensitive shoreland and natural area. Sunfish Lake is a natural environment lake, which is our most heavily protected water body classification. All right, public hearing. So there were 2 public hearings that were sent out. The first one was sent to surrounding property owners on January 6th and published in the local paper on January 10th. Because the Planning Commission tabled this item, we re-advertised the public hearing. So that was sent to surrounding property owners on the 14th and published in the paper on the 17th. And then I'll just recap the public comment received. Craig Allen, which is one of the signers of the variance application, noted that he is not supporting the current design and encroachment into his property, and he is indifferent to the outlot design. And then the residents of 3691 Kelvin spoke at the public hearing and provided written comment that they are in support of the request, citing that they received a variance back in 1993, and they feel that the request is reasonable given the unique lot topography, existing homes, and that it should not impact character. The residents of 3681 Kelvin also provided a written comment in support of the request, citing that the shoreline is already compromised and a new home would not change that character. And Planning Commission reviewed this request. Again, they tabled this at their January 13th meeting. They did review it at their January 27th meeting, and they voted to follow staff's recommendation to deny the 7 requests. They had discussions and concerns with site design, the size of the house, not meeting the variance criteria, and the DNR's memo. That vote was 4-0. If the council would like to approve the request, staff is recommending 7 conditions of approval. I'll run through those quickly. The first is that all necessary permits are obtained. The second is that when utilities are available, they would need to connect and pay those fees. The third is that they would need access to the improved street before any construction were to start. The fourth is that they would need to record the approval resolution so any future buyer is aware of the variances and the expiration. The fifth is that easements are obtained. Sixth is that standard 12-month expiration. And seventh is new between Planning Commission and City Council. It's assumed that the applicant will combine the outlot with the existing lot, but we just want to get that in writing that that would be a requirement. So then, because this request does not meet all 4 criteria, staff is recommending denial. I can stand for any questions. We do have the applicant here, and we actually have the developer here as well.
Can you show on the map where this outlot B, if that was, are you saying connected, how that would give them the room needed to do? Is that, are we able to see that?
Sorry.
Where's this outlot B?
So in this picture, it's that little spur in the northeast corner
Okay,
that goes inland from the lake. So that's the outlot B. The rest of that parcel is the existing Chavez parcel.
okay.
And I can pull it
So
up.
even that outlot B doesn't give them the opportunity to move that structure any further east, correct?
They, The existing shape, I don't believe so.
Okay. Any questions for Sophia, other than what I had there? Councilmember Dragisich?
So as I understand it, the request for the variance is based on a plan for a house that they're not actually planning to build.
Correct. I believe the applicant could speak to their plans better, but at this time, they're not actually building the house.
And so that was the way I read the information as well. So it's more of a, I guess, a statement to, is this a buildable lot maybe type question? You probably don't know the answer, but that, as I read through all the documents, since it's a plan for a house that's actually not being built on a lot that has no access, they're looking to determine if the lot is buildable for, maybe for future sale or something, but they're not actually planning to build this structure at this time.
Correct, but I believe the intent would be to have a structure of that size on the parcel at some point.
Thank you.
Councilmember Holtz?
So I'm looking at the elevations right now and doing the 150 feet from the lake. Is there a part of the property that is outside the 150-foot mark?
Yes,
And would it be inside of any setbacks from the north and the east?
so right here,
That's, okay, that's
this
the
is the
line.
line that's the 150, so there's all this area in here.
So essentially
Where
it
a home
cuts,
could be built. There is, these blue dash lines are the bluff area, so I don't know that they'd be able to meet the bluff, but a smaller home may be able to fit within that 150 foot.
there's the dot. Follow-up question then, in terms of the outlot, because I know information was provided then from that perspective. If that outlot then was shifted one piece to the north and it was somewhat, you know, directly above where it says outlot B parcel, say yours there, is that something that can still be decided upon by both parties, or is that outlot already been,
Are you talking right here?
yeah?
Yeah, so when this came forward to council for the comprehensive plan amendment, the outlot shape was actually drawn like this, which actually gives them area that's outside of the steep slopes and the bluff. The applicant decided to proceed ahead of Northstar Second Edition's final plat submittal, and so they're proceeding with the original outlot shape instead of that amended outlot shape.
Why?
Probably direct that question to the applicant.
Thank you.
Do we hear from the applicant?
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Joe Chavez, and I live at 3505 Kelvin Avenue North. And my wife and I have lived there for 44 years. So we've seen basically just about all the development on Sunfish Lake, except for the southeast corner where the Hillfish House is and the Olson Farm is. Other than that, my father-in-law lived next door. And just to give you a little background in terms of the history. So our parcel of land was once part of the Canopy, then Bobian Farm, and it has remained in the family since the 1960s. Part of the farm is now a portion of Sunfish Lake Park. In 1980, the parcel became a lot of record, but has been landlocked in spite of 20-plus years trying to gain access and an easement to that property. Now, my goal today really is to really have the city council make an informed decision on the facts, that I strongly feel that this is a reasonable variance request for a single-family home, and we're really talking about 30 feet to be able to do that. Now, I'm not changing the essential character of the locality as the city has suggested. And I am willing to work with the city to come up with a equitable solution to be able to have this designated as a buildable lot. Now, the question came up, you know, am I planning to build a house there? Now, my main objective was to demonstrate that this is a buildable lot with a variance. This is not a building permit. That, who knows how long down that road that might come. But just to reference some of the comments in terms of Minnesota Statute 462.357, it says, so strong is the presumption that pre-existing shoreline lots like this can be used for a house that the Minnesota statute 462.37 indicates that a variance for such a substandard lot, regardless of size, is not even needed if it can have a sewer or septic and can meet the setback requirements. What I'm asking for is for the setback requirements, period. That's what we're really fighting for. In addition, as I mentioned, we're not changing the essential character of the locality, nor are we impacting sensitive natural area. Now, I submitted photos on Friday, photos of the lake on the eastern side, that where you can clearly see the houses in the hamlet. You can clearly see the houses in the legacy development. You can clearly see the house on the southwest corner, as well as all the other houses on the western side of the lake. So we're not changing the character of the locality. Now, in terms of some of the claims that the city has made, enjoyment to the parcel in its natural state, building a smaller house. Well, there's no stated criteria for what is large that they stipulate. It's a large house. There's no criteria for it. And when you take a look at the surrounding area, right to the north of the parcel where the hamlet is, there are homes that are between 2,400 and 2,900 square feet. In the legacy development, just to the east of the parcel, there are homes that are between 3,100 and 4,000 square feet. Now, the other point that the city made was that moving the house further from the lake. When she showed you the survey there, and I also submitted a photo overlay of the survey that really shows where the 896.4 ordinary high water, or the watermark is, as well as the 150-foot natural environment lake setback is. That runs right through the footprint of the house. And there is no other logical parcel or logical place where I can move that footprint of the house. According to the surveyor, we looked at it, this is the most logical place. We're in the most northeasterly corner of the parcel that's buildable. In addition, when you look at that photo overlay that I submitted, is that you can see the 150-foot setback runs across the entire Sunfish Lake. All the homes on the lake are on that 150-foot setback. The other point, using the property as an access to Sunfish Lake are sufficient uses of the property. I guess I beg to differ, because when you look at that parcel and you look at the lots that are next to the outlet to the north of me and to the south of me are extremely valuable parcels of land. So to assume that it is sufficient use of the property, I just don't agree with that. Now, the other point was constructing a large family home, single-family home, is not a necessity in a sensitive natural area. And I guess, what is the basis for that? The footprint of the house is smaller than the existing homes that surround it. It's 2437. And as I mentioned earlier, I am willing to sit down with the city and work out an equitable solution. Also, as a fact, this is the only remaining lot on record on Sunfish Lake that is buildable. There is no other lot on Sunfish Lake that is buildable. Now, unique circumstances. Applicant have the ability to acquire land. Well, if I had to acquire more land, then there would be no need for a variance. Now, to give you some background to it, years ago, when the hamlet was being developed, I approached the Shilkin Farm and offered to buy land. I was refused. I went to the hamlet for an easement to get access out on Kendrick Circle. That Kendrick Circle is surrounded by conservation easements that could not be changed. And the city was even willing to work with me to offer substitute lots, land, to the DNR. They refused. And then most recently, when the legacy development was underway, I again went to the Shilkin Farm and asked for an easement. They denied it again. So we have made multiple efforts to find a solution to make this a buildable lot, and we've been refused at every single turn. Now, in respect to the character of locality, if you look at the picture that we submitted on the photo overlay and the shoreline, the houses in the hamlet, again, I mentioned, are clearly visible. Now, the position of the footprint of the house will make it virtually indistinguishable and will provide a buffer to sunfish access. Because where that house is placed right now, the footprint is on the very edge of the tree line on the bluff. And I circled that in one of the pictures that I submitted with a red circle. You wouldn't even see the house. So basically, I mean, the house is located in the most inconspicuous location on that parcel. You know, in addition, you know, I mentioned that I'm only asking for a reasonable request for a variance. I'm not asking to cut a swath on that hill to put a dock and a path down to the lake, as the hamlet was also approved to do. Because right next to me, on the hamlet property, there is an asphalt path that goes right down to the lake. There's a dock there. On the western side of the lake, there's also a dock. There are also hunting blinds on the lake. I'm not proposing any of that. I just want a variance for 30 feet. And I just hope that, that these facts and the pictures that I submitted, you know, will allow you to make the right decision. Because if you just look at that survey and you don't go out to that site and look at it, you will be able to see the difference in what I'm talking about. So, be happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question right away, and it's probably for you and maybe for staff as well, but, so do you believe if you're unable to get that 30 feet, you believe that this is no longer a buildable lot then at that point?
Exactly, because I can't get a variance to build. It's not a buildable lot then. I'm not asking for a building permit. Because if you look at some of the houses on the hamlet and on Legacy, they're two-story houses. You can see them right to the bluff. And those are the pictures that I submitted.
Could maybe staff elaborate on that as well? Because I mean, I know, like, you know, in the beginning, the goal was asking for no variances, so I'm assuming the thought process was that either more land could have been acquired from Northstar in that outlot. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit as well?
Correct. So there ideally was an option to acquire more property through that outlot. There's also a possibility of reducing the house size, possibly moving it out of the ordinary high water setback. I believe there's a way to at least reduce the number of variances needed. I don't know that you'd be able to eliminate them. And the difference between the Hamlet and Northstar homes is they're not actually built in a bluff. They're set back from the bluff zone.
But you can see them. If they're so concerned about protecting the bluff and the view, you can see all those houses, period, regardless of where they're at. I understand that they were set back far enough off that bluff line that the DNR set, but nevertheless, you can still see them. And as I mentioned earlier, I'd be willing to work with the city to find an equitable solution for that, for the footprint of the house. Because even at 2437, it is not a large house compared to the houses that are around there, period. And if you look on the west side of the lake, my neighbor's house is 5,000 square feet. All of the houses, except for maybe one, is under 3,000 square feet. And I think if you look at the lake, you can't even see those homes except the ones that are on 14. The Hillpish house and then the other house with the swimming pool. The rest of them you can't see because they're set back. They have not, impacted the essential character of the locality, period. And the footprint on this house certainly won't do that because it's going to be in the most inconspicuous space where you won't see it behind those trees. It's one of the most heavily wooded parts of the lake.
Councilmember Dragisich.
Two questions. One, how to respond to the concerns of the DNR, who could actually challenge us if we granted such a variance under statute? And secondly, when you say you're willing to work with the city to find a compromise, does the compromise include making the house smaller?
Yes.
To make it fit?
Yes, yeah, exactly, because, my intent was essentially just to say, okay, here's a footprint for a house that's buildable, okay? Because when you look at that neighborhood there, okay, all the houses that are going to be put in phase 2 on that western side are the choice lots in the development, period. They're not going to be cheap.
So if you're willing to make the house smaller,
Reasonable, yeah, I'll be. Yes. I'm not, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not asking for a building permit.
understand, so if you're willing to make the house smaller, why aren't you willing to make it small enough and move it so it doesn't require a variance?
Well, that's going to be the challenge based on the topography of the lot. Because when you look at the surveyor put in all the rain gardens in there to protect any nutrients flowing into the lake, because that's what the DNR was concerned about, the nutrients polluting the lake. So there are various rain gardens there. There are all the drainage considerations that are there. There are culverts there to prevent any mitigation of nutrients flowing down to the lake. So we're talking about one house, one footprint of a reasonable size house based on the neighborhood.
So my other question is, since the variance would last 12 months, and I understand from reading the information, it's unlikely that the utilities and the pros and all we put in within the next 12 months, then the variance would go away and you'd be back to square one.
I understand, because if the variance is granted now, and the variance expires, because I believe that the next thing on the agenda is the final approval of Phase 2 for Northstar, okay? Now, the houses that are going up right next to it right now on the very edge, there are 2 houses that are going right next to the lot right now. So 12 months, maybe the street will be there, maybe it won't. But at least there's a precedent that says, okay, based on this drawing, on this survey, it's a buildable lot. So they'll just have to reapply and extend it again. Because nothing's going to change. The footprint, the topography on that parcel isn't going to change.
It seems to me that,
If you have a discussion point, we'll hold
Have a
it till
discussion.
after motion.
Sure. Jeff, sorry if are you going?
Go.
So just to follow up, and I guess, Mr. Chavez, can you clarify, maybe we don't need a clarification, because it does pretty openly state it, that this intent is not to build on, it's to prove that it's buildable for resale purposes. So if I'm understanding you right, we wouldn't be working with you for determining what would be the appropriate footprint, this would be the next person.
Exactly. I'm just going here to illustrate from a marketing standpoint that this is a buildable lot. Because if this goes out to the market, they're going to say, is this a buildable lot? Yeah, this is a buildable lot. Here's the variance. So whenever that next owner comes down the road, whether it's a family member of mine or somebody else comes down the road, okay, they understand it.
So what if you knew that it was a buildable lot without these variances?
You can't market if it's not a buildable lot. Who's going to buy a lot you can't build on?
So according to staff, it seems as though there are opportunities to make this a buildable lot without the variances. So I'm just going, again,
I
maybe I'm
understand.
incorrect, but
Yeah.
if we are able to make it a buildable lot without the variances, and yes, it would require possibly a smaller footprint.
Right.
Possibly moving it further, acquiring more land from the Northstar.
Well,
It
inquiring more
would
land
be
from the North
buildable
Star,
then.
if I can address that, because, they mentioned that there was another reconfigured outlot. I worked with the developer in order to configure the outlot so it had better access to the lot. And we had a drawing and agreed upon it. But he wouldn't plat that reconfigured lot unless I got a variance. So I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place. And secondarily, when initially I was going to use that reconfigured outlot, but the city refused because they said, sorry, you can't do it, it's not platted. So I had to go with what the developer originally platted.
Can I do one more follow-up with this?
Yeah.
So again, I guess kind of off the same line of question here of, this does sound like, obviously, for financial reasons, right? I get that. This is more for council. In the DNR's report, they specifically state that state law does not allow approving variances solely for financial reasons. I don't know if, council, if we can speak to that at all in this situation, how that.
That council, I thought you meant us.
No, sorry, Sarah. With that statement from the DNR, I guess I'm having a hard time. This sounds like this is for financial reasons, which, again, understand as a homeowner. How does that play into this decision?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, economic considerations are not to be taken into account when considering a variance. So you must weigh all the other variance standards such as practical difficulties and the character of the locality, you know, all the ones that Sophia went through.
Unique
Got
circumstances.
it. But it's also not a disqualifier,
No,
is what I'm, okay.
just
Thank you.
can't be the only thing.
Okay.
Any further questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, Mr. Chavez.
Well, thank you.
I don't know.
What does the process of acquiring more land from Northstar look like? Just to help me understand, I mean, is this something that we're saying is gonna would take years, a lot of a financial investment on the landowners?
I think it could be as simple as a lot line adjustment, which is administrative through city staff's end. It'll be a few $100s in maybe a week or two.
Okay.
Obviously, the developer would need to consent and we'd need to review that part of it, but
Councilmember Volz.
Clarifying question then. Has there been any conversation thus far with the developer about that topic? I know Mr. Allen had submitted comments saying indifferent to the current outlot design. Has anything else then been discussed to say, well, based upon that, if it shifted this way,
we haven't really gotten, as a city, into private property negotiations, but if the developer is willing to speak, I think he could speak to that.
Would you be willing to speak to that, Mr. Allen?
Craig Allen, GWSA.
Yeah.
I guess a little background's probably needed. We were asked to provide an outlot for Mr. Chavez to get access, and we were totally fine with that. My engineer at the time, Mr. Chavez hadn't done any work, so my engineer just put a access to where he thought the best location would be. A big, it's a big access that we provided for him. You know, in the last year, he's gone through, he's done a lot of work, and I'm the last person, as a developer, I'm not gonna get up here and, you know, talk about property, you know, if he can get it approved, all for it. I mean, originally he came to us to buy it, and we did it because we didn't think it was buildable, so, you know, we didn't pursue it. But we did provide him access. He's gone through this. Originally he had the house rotated to where the garage was on the left side of the house instead of the right. So the theory to us, I mean, what he brought to us was, can you change this outlot so I can have a garage left? And we said, sure, like, we'll work with you. It's not ideal. Obviously, we got houses right in front of you. They're gonna be looking out their back door, looking right at front of your house, but yeah, we'll work with you. So there's an outlot design that we worked with them. We said when we deed it, we'll have some deed restrictions. You have to screen so those homeowners aren't looking right into your front yard. We'll put some other deed restrictions similar to what's in our development, you know, no bulldogs, no, you know, fencing, no parking trailers in the outlot. You know, obviously we gotta protect our property as well in our development. So, but he agreed to all that. That's what we were gonna do. And then he all of a sudden decided to come in earlier because he wanted to get this to be marketable. And I believe since he came earlier and it's preliminary platted with this outlot and it's not a final plat, he had to go with this outlot shape. So that's the history of, there's been no ask of purchasing property. I don't know, that's first I've heard of it. And I don't even know if he's actually admitted tonight that he wants to purchase property, but you guys brought it up. We could discuss it. This outlot's about 7,500 square feet, which we have lots in the development for 7,500 square feet. I mean, it's a lot, it's a big piece of property. we're not charging him for, he's not paying for the property. We're paying to get the streets and the sewer and water, and we brought it from across Stillwater Boulevard. We've spent, each lot's about, $100,000 to develop. And we haven't asked for anything. We just asked him that when we put in the sewer and water stub, that he has to pay for that stub.
Yeah.
So that's the history from my side.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Question for Sophia. Sophia, so just so I understand, as I look at the map, the lot is buildable with a smaller house. I mean, have we looked at that?
We'd have to review a site plan. It's hard to say what smaller is, and
I think it's kind of key is, if the lot's not buildable, with even a smaller house, it's a little different situation than if it is buildable, but the applicant's just looking for, a bigger home.
yeah, there are variances beyond the setback-related ones.
All right. Any more questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 2025-13 denying all of the 7 shoreland variance requests from Joe and Joan Chavez for the property located at 14.029.21.24.0004 and Outlot B of Northstar First Edition based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any discussion? Councilmember Holtz.
I mean, I recall this when we were doing the preliminary plats for Northstar, and that was part of the discussion, that there needs to be access, so the property has the chance to move along. This has been a years-long process, so at the end of the day, what is currently before us, and I get the questions, is it buildable? The question before us today, these things, this proposal, I do agree with staff, a minimum of 2 of them do not meet the variance requirements. I think in terms of character of locality, there's room for discussion there. It comes down to whether you consider the eastern shore, just the character of locality, or if you consider western and eastern. Because there are differences, as was correctly noted by Mr. Chavez, that houses that were built 30 and 40 years ago on the west side are closer. But on the eastern side, it's vastly different, and they're on top of the bluff. But I fully agree with the other 2 findings that the unique circumstances are not met.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Dragisich?
I think that, there will be some value to having, Mr. Chavez and staff and DNR sit down and talk about how this could potentially be resolved with fewer variances, because I'm sympathetic to his situation, but we have, all these forces that are, that just don't seem to work, and then we have the DNR on the other side, a state agency, telling us we should deny, and we're really in a very difficult position. But if there's a chance to find a solution that would work for everybody, and the DNR would accept, we could get this resolved.
You want any other? Otherwise, I'll call the question.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I look at this and understand some of the points that have been made. Setbacks and shoreland and bluff things happen. I know I have friends that can't remove trees along the St. Croix River because of the bluff land view. I understand people that have cabins up north that have existed for 60 years and they're not able to build another structure like their neighbor did next to the shoreland because the shoreland requirements have changed. And those things happen over time. I see 5 of the 7 variance requests. This isn't like where we sometimes get 1 or 2 variance requests. This is 7 variance requests with 5 of them absolutely not permitted. I'm gonna go with the motion on denial, so. And then hope that the property owner can work with the developer and the city and see if they can't work something out. But as it sits for me, it doesn't pass the mustard. So, All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next is Northstar Second Edition, Final Plat and Final PUD.
All right, thank you, Mayor. The applicant for tonight's application is GWSA Land Development. The property in question tonight is Outlot J and Outlot L of Northstar First Edition. The property is a little over 16 acres. This addition is strictly residential lots. There are no outlots proposed with this addition. The property is zoned Village Low Density Residential with the Shoreland Overlay and guided in the city's comp plan as Village Low Density Residential. There are 61 units proposed with this addition. That is a density of 3.78 units per acre. That averages out with the other additions to the 2.27 units per acre, which was approved with preliminary plat. A little bit of history on this. Preliminary plat was approved December of 2022. First edition was approved August of 2023. They had a MUSA comp plan amendment for phasing in October of 2023. Before you is the second edition, and then there would be a third edition with this development. So this slide shows the preliminary plat layout. The lots that are green are what was included with first edition. The purplish lots with the dark purple border are what is included with the second edition. And the purple lots that don't have a border would be that future edition. This slide shows the second edition final plat for both of those areas that were previously outlined in purple. This proposal is consistent with the preliminary plat layout and approvals. So one unique thing with this edition, as part of the second edition, the developer is responsible for trail connection between Northstar and Legacy at Northstar as part of their park dedication requirements. So conditions of approval have been incorporated into the staff report that relate to the trail connection. The image to the left is the existing site conditions, and the image to the right is the proposed grading plan. There's going to be some tree removals and likely a retaining wall that would be included in this work.
Is that a paved trail?
Correct.
Thank you.
PUD flexibilities are highlighted on this slide. The flexibilities are the cells that are bluish gray. These flexibilities are the same that was granted with preliminary plat and with first edition. So we can circle back if there's any questions, but again, those are the same. Staff is recommending 9 findings of fact. In summary, those are that the application requirements and subdivision requirements have been met. The plans are consistent with the preliminary plat plans. The application is consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan. The application is consistent with the VLDR and shoreland zoning districts, except where PUD flexibilities are provided. And the design standards and engineering standards are met, except for where PUD exceptions are provided. So we did send this application out for agency review on January 3rd. The fire department provided their standard comments regarding drive lanes, entrances, phasing, hydrants, addressing, and parking. The landscape architect provided comments that their landscape plans are acceptable other than the legacy trail tree relocation, so they requested revisions. The city engineer provided comments on construction plans, trail connection, stormwater reuse, and easements. They also requested revisions. The watershed indicated that a permit has been issued for this project. The DNR deferred to their preliminary plat memo comments, so they have nothing new with the second edition. The city attorney provided a plat opinion, and the county had no comments. Staff is recommending 13 conditions of approval with this request. In summary, those are that the applicant meets all of the memo requirements from the agency review, that all fees are paid, they record within the 180-day deadline, that the necessary agreements are entered into, no deviations are proposed or approved for signage. There are conditions regarding the trail connection with Legacy, and that they must get all necessary permits. And again, this second edition is consistent with the preliminary plat approvals. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the second edition. Can stand for any questions, and we do have the developer here.
Questions for Sophia? Councilmember Holtz?
I guess maybe this is more for the developer. This is probably our largest development thus far that's using stormwater reuse. And I was just wondering if there are things that you've encountered thus far that you weren't expecting, things that you've learned, things that maybe are good for the city to know. We might know already, council may not, but just things that you're starting to encounter that maybe we should start to consider, because stormwater reuse is going to be something that we will do for probably every future development. And then on the second note, I was looking through the stuff and I didn't see it, but is there any consideration for the types of sod that's being done? Has there been, from a development standpoint, is there any new technology, new innovation for more drought-resistant things that maybe the extension service is doing, or just things that are out there? So on my end, I'm trying to look long-term. What are our water conservation strategies and things that you've maybe encountered thus far?
Unfortunately, we're behind on everything here. We haven't even started on the irrigation yet. The ponds are dug, but we just barely got the streets in before the end of the year. We got delayed when we were going across the railroad tracks. You probably saw that shut down for a very long time. We had to get a lumen line relocated, and it ate up a lot of time. So first thing in the spring, we'll start doing the stormwater, putting the pipe in, the main line, and get that going. So I honestly can't address that question. And as far as the sod and those questions, again, it's a similar thing. As far as our other developments and our builders, I don't think anybody's looking at other solutions right now than the just normal, sod and irrigation but I know it's starting to be a concern in a lot of cities, and, it's probably, going forward, it's gonna probably be an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion.
Move to adopt Resolution 2025-14, approving the final plat and PUD requested by GWSA Land Development LLC for the subject property based on the findings of fact and recommended conditions of approval listed in the staff report.
There's a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Number 12 on our agenda today is the Lake Elmo Elementary Final Plat, Resolution 2025-15.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. So with the Lake Elmo Elementary project, we are at the one of the final steps in the entitlement process, the final plat. So I think you all remember this site very well since you've reviewed it relatively recently in its preliminary platform when they got the CUP approval and variances. The site is just over 40 acres. The building, again, will be just under 150,000 square feet. In terms of land use guidance, that has all been put into place as requested by the school district and approved by the city. So without further ado, here's the final plat. It's one lot and that's it. So you do have a number of easements, of course, on this property that coincide with the improvements and other, basically necessary areas where the city is requiring easements. So there are a number of those visible on the plat, along with the dedication on 10th Street North and Lake Elmo Avenue. Here on this slide, you can see these are the site improvements. These are pretty much mirroring exactly what you reviewed at the preliminary plat stage. There's a couple minor tweaks. One of them that I would draw your attention to is the trail that was added to allow for better pedestrian connectivity to those folks coming south along Lake Elmo Avenue. So that was a condition of the prior approval. Like I said, though, most of these improvements are just what you reviewed at the last step. So with the final plat and construction plans being submitted to the city, they have been circulated for review. And so we have review comments provided by city staff. The fire department provided a comment memo requiring some of those standard fire systems, the suppression systems, et cetera. The city engineer did provide a comment memo regarding final revisions to the construction plans. and the final plat. And lastly, the city's landscape architect memo. Landscape architect did provide a memo with some minor revisions to the landscaping plan. All told, most of these revisions are not, major in nature. So we also did get a letter from the Washington County DOT regarding the approval of those access points along both county roads. So we're feeling confident that, those are moving forward, and we've been working with those folks in our monthly meetings for the last year or so. Valley Branch watershed permit has already been received by the school district as well. So staff are proposing findings that would support an approval. They're listed in the staff report and on this slide. Generally speaking, though, the final plat is meeting those land use requirements, plans, et cetera, of the city. So conditions of approval are suggested by staff. We have 23 of them. That's a lot, I know, but most of them are very similar, almost exactly the same to what was approved in the preliminary plat. So just to summarize those conditions, we've got 12 what I'd call mostly standard conditions, things like requiring a development agreement, making sure that the plans ultimately reflect all of the conditions of the staff's review memos, getting fees, permits, et cetera. There are some conditions that are unique to the county roadway improvements, making sure that we're getting additional stormwater ponding that's needed to support the development of intersection improvements at 10 and 17. We've also got a number of other comments relating to things like that trail access being included, turn lane, et cetera, being required. Lastly, there are some other unique comments to the tree mitigation plan and buffer area. So making sure that the city does capture some cash in lieu of tree mitigation to allow for plantings around the city. And also paying attention to any improvements that do or eventually may be proposed in that buffer area west of the school building to ensure that they meet both the city's design standards and, if necessary, we could review against the state's shooting range standards as well. So those are the conditions generally summarized. And lastly, we do have a recommendation again for approval, and that is drafted on the screen for you. I'm happy to stand for questions, and I would note that the school district's team is also here should you want to ask them anything as well.
Questions for Mr. First?
I have a question, maybe it's a little bit crazy, but, as you see the trail along Lake Elmo Avenue going down to the end of the school property, it's interesting if there wouldn't be some thought about extending that further north to connect into the trail that goes through the Lennar, Royal Golf Club, because you have a trail from the Royal Golf going from 10th Street all the way through the Royal Golf Club, all the way up to Lake Elmo Avenue on Royal Boulevard. It's probably a couple hundred feet. Wouldn't it be neat if that was all connected up and you'd have a system where children and students living in that Royal Golf Club could walk safely to the school? I know it's not the school's issue per se, but has there been any discussion or thought about that?
Certainly there has been thought to how do we connect this development better to those folks who are going to come from that area from the north. The Royal Golf Club being a great example of people that would maybe ended up walking or biking to the school. So certainly that's why the trail connection, if I can get the cursor to show up on the screen, you can kind of see it here where that trail cuts into the school's site. That was added as a result of some of the conversations with Washington County as well about, and the school district, about getting access, but there have been no requirements, at least on the school district's project, to provide a trail north, although through future improvement projects, such as like Safe Routes to School funded projects, which would be a really good grant funding source, you could get that trail connection made, I think, in a pretty effective manner.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks. Anybody want to hear from the applicant? I don't know that I need to, but I think we're good. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to adopt Resolution 2025-15, approving the final plat request for Lake Elmo Elementary, as proposed by Stillwater Area Public Schools, ISD 834, with the conditions and findings listed in the staff report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second, just discussion. The only thing I'd like to address, it was, because it wasn't a question, Councilmember Dragisich, is that how that funding works on the safe routes to schools, you actually have to have a school there before they're gonna give any grant for that. But that's where we should try and make sure that we work with the school district and the county to connect both, the Royal and Cimarron, trail connections for the students that'll be using that school. That's all I wanted to say on that. So,
Thank you, Mayor.
yeah.
Second that.
Anybody else have any discussion points? Otherwise, I'll just call the question. All those in favor of adopting resolution 2025-15, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda, discussion on 3M PFAS settlement priority 2 RFP city submission. Is this something you guys talked about at a workshop last time?
Nope.
There's a different,
It is brand new.
So
there's a different, that was brought up similar.
I don't have a full presentation, but this is a brand-new project. As many of you know, we've been talking about the ball fields and the site where there's a purchase agreement signed, and we're working through that process to purchase that new park area. So one of the things we've been talking about, because we were aware of the 3M Priority 2 settlement, is that this would be potentially a project that we could apply for some funding to build ball fields. So what we're looking at today is just to enter into the letter of intent that is going to be released, I believe, this month. And then they would review the project to see if it's eligible, and then would request or require an application in the fall. So what we're proposing today, so we don't miss out on this opportunity, is to go ahead and apply just to see if it would qualify based on information that's in the park master plan. And this is basically, just to sum it up, it would be, as of now, 4 grass dirt baseball fields with the dugouts, batting cages, lighting poles, lighting with metal poles, signage, picnic tables, concession, drinking fountain, internal drainage, storage for equipment, fencing, landscaping, parking lot, bike racks, trash and recycling receptacles. This is what's listed in the plan. We believe we would have to start a planning process after, but this would be a first step just so we don't miss out on this funding, which is considerable. It's a $20 million pot of money. And we think it's a really good project, especially tying in Sunfish Lake Park and the county park. So just a good opportunity to see if we could get some money. And then I think the way we would submit it as written is have phase 1, which would be the ball fields, and then just like the other phases, which would be the longer planning process.
Okay. You have questions?
So you were asking about it, and I can't remember if it was at a workshop, but we were having the same discussion about the bridge across Sunfish Lake. That's what it was.
Bridge and the
And I
solar.
can't remember did we end up asking for that letter of intent?
There's
To
a
be sent
couple,
out as well?
there's a couple applications. I know there's the boardwalk in Sunfish Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's also the landfill site
Yeah.
to pay off the bond.
And I think Mr. Manzera is doing both of those.
Okay.
He's submitting 3.
Okay.
But just, there's also different goals, just to be clear. So they're funding different things. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So this fits in a unique pocket?
goal 3.
Okay. I like it. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. We don't have a motion.
So on your end, obviously after the letter of intent, if they like it, there's then a Q&A session, as I recall. Is that probably when we would start to say, here's our estimate for X, here's our estimate for Y, so then they would know? Or, I mean, do we have enough data already to know based upon what's in our parks plan? How do you see that unfolding?
I think one of the things we're asking for is a proposal from Bolton and Mink to go forward with the planning process on this. So we received an estimate today for $7,500 to go through that process to start the long-term planning.
Gotcha.
You can see here, I put this up on the screen, the full RFP grant application would be due in the fall. So this is really just filtering out applications.
So you would feel confident that by the fall, we would have some pretty good numbers to put in.
Oh, definitely. I think one of the things we would want to do is, if they require us to do a basic overlay of a cloverleaf or pinwheel, we could go ahead and do that really quickly, just to show kind of the facilities and how that lays out. And then if the council wants to move forward with the submittal, we're going to have to obviously bring that back for the 7,500. We're going to have a cost estimate and everything to go along with that.
Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to submit of letter of intent submission by staff to the 3M Priority 2 grant funds for funding for park recreational programming and facilities at the planned city park, PID 150-292-142-0004, and the same ending in 0001.
Support.
Any discussion needed? Councilmember Holtz.
I fully appreciate this. I thank staff for their quick turnaround on this. There's something I brought up after speaking with a different staff member on this topic, and I appreciate you able to get this quickly, but also a willingness to move forward on it. I fully agree that it fits with Goal 3. I think the lens I see it from is we cannot fully utilize Lake Elmo itself. We can fish there, but we can't eat it. And so we're limited in our recreational opportunities, and that's for perpetuity. That is going to be for millennia. And this fits exactly with what we were discussing in the Priority 2 work groups in terms of different ideas for what Goal 3 looks like, is essentially because this is harmed, you fund something else that's still a recreational opportunity. So I think it fits right in.
All right. All those in favor of the motion to support a letter of intent submission by staff for the 3M Priority 2 grant fundings, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is passed. Next, we move on to council reports. Councilmember Dragisich, you have anything this week?
Yeah, just the whole process we went through with this variance request, I had had some contact with staff. I had a lot of questions about it. I keep telling in my emails, I'm the nerd city council member, but I did have questions of multiple members of the staff. I just want to thank them for getting back and providing answers to those questions and doing a very thorough analysis in response to my questions and concerns. And I know that sometimes involves extra time on their part because I kind of look at every I and T and all that other stuff. But I want to publicly thank them for the work that they did and the analysis that they did on that issue, which was very difficult and complicated.
Councilmember Holtz.
When they get an email from Councilmember Dragisich. Last Friday, the Montemita School District held its local leaders meeting, and there's leaders from Hugo and Grant, Lake Elmo, Montemita itself, and then from Montemita School District. And just as FYI, so we do have northwest part of town here is in the Montemita School District. The district is planning to go out for a bond this fall, likely in the $20 to $30 million range for some core improvements, security features, updating of bathrooms. Not a new elementary, not a new, it's really some upkeeping and some maintenance pieces. But they also were looking for feedback from the facilities as to partnerships and to ways to use their items more efficiently. And so they're definitely being smart. They're trying to use their resources wisely. And there's a very good meeting in many ways, able to talk about water with Montemita and Hugo, the topic that never ends. But yeah, it was a good conversation, and wish them the best.
All right, I don't have anything.
Yeah, no report.
All right. Staff report.
Today, I attended the White Bear Lake Area Comprehensive Work Group with Special Projects, Clark Schroeder as well. And the Project 1007, there was an update on that, as well as some reports on wastewater use and an updated modeling from the DNR. And then the rest of this year, The meetings will focus on presentations for updated studies that the group has decided on.
Okay. Ms. Johnson,
No report.
report?
No report.
No report.
No report. No report.
No report.
No report.
Just very quickly, let council know that last week we wrapped up public neighborhood meetings for the 2025 street improvement areas. Just to refresh everybody, those are in the northwest part of town, various street segments, including 49th Street North, 55th North, 57th North, 59th North, Jasper Avenue North, and Irish Court North. And we'll be back before you next meeting with seeking authorization for plans and specs.
All right. There.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I will be attending the city attorney conference on Thursday and Friday of this week and speaking on development agreements.
Sounds invigorating. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting for this evening. Thank you, everybody.